I can always tell if your content will be successful in actually driving revenue to your business based on how you answer or don't answer one particular question. That question is, what does your audience want? And not the answer that they would give if they're sitting with a group of their peers, the acceptable answer. The actual answer to what do they want? What do they truly desire in their heart of hearts? The thing that they will just DM you, they're not going to put in a comment, they're going to say in private, not in public. The people that know exactly the answer to that question are the one who are able to get the attention of their audience. Every time they make content, they start with whatever that thing is that people want. And then they branch out from there. So it's almost like they always talk about the same thing, just in different ways. They have different entry points to talking about that single subject that is the thing that the audience truly, truly wants. Now, how do you get there? I think that's an interesting question because I talk to a lot of people who are really good at creating content. It doesn't mean that you're not good at creating content if you don't know the answer to that question. It just means that your paradigm is outdated. The old paradigm of search was take a query, take an idea, make a piece of content. And that was just it. Do it over and over again. Break it down, go into more and more subjects, build a library of content. That was the old method. There was lots of companies who built a whole legacy off of building libraries of content. Unfortunately, they don't exist anymore. They all went out of business somewhere between 2018 and 2024. Now, the way that you have to do content is through empathy and connection first. Then you can get into the actual subject that you're talking about. You have to connect with people first. That's what people like to call a hook. And it's really not a hook. It's really a connection point. And the connection point is over the thing that your audience truly wants. That's why I keep harping on that point. Because if you can answer that question, what does your audience really want? Then you can mention that thing every single time that you open a piece of content, which is the hook. But really, the hook is just addressing what it is that people want from you. So if you can start with that, then you actually get through the noise and you're able to connect directly to the person on the other side of the screen. Now, people can tell. They can tell if you don't actually care to answer that question. You have to show up with a certain level of passion where it's like, hey, if you answer this question for yourself, your life is going to be so much better. And I actually believe that. And oftentimes that's where story comes into this because you're sharing a story of like, hey, I was dealing with this problem. I got through it. Here's what it's like on the other side. And then that's what actually connects people from the problem to the solution. Again, problem solution is like the old world style of content. Oh, here's a problem. Here's how to solve it. Here's a problem. Here's how to solve it. Here's a problem. Here's how to solve it. That's not what you do anymore. What you do now is you start with, hey, I know what it feels like to be in the position that you're in. Start there. That's the first thing. And then you say, I went through that. So that's where your story comes in, right? Then you say, here's what it's like on the other side. And then once you get through those three things, that's when you can start to introduce more of the practical aspects. So it's just totally different because the old way was just start directly with the practical. You're thinking about people searching for this solution. So they already are aware that they want this solution. Now, this new way is starting with how people feel inside. What's going on with them? What do they want? What do they want? What do they want? That's all it is. Now, empathy, which is what this is kind of all rolling up to, starts with curiosity. Curiosity is saying, somebody asks you this question and you say, I wonder why. What's going on there? And this is how you actually have these conversations. People ask you these questions and you're like, oh, what prompts you to ask that? What are you thinking right now? What's going on in your world? You get curious. You actually have these conversations over and over and over and over again. The creators who can answer this question of what does the audience want directly, whenever I ask them, oh, how many DMs have you gotten where people are asking for that thing? They're like, oh, thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes millions. The level of want is really high, but then also the level of curiosity is really high from the creator, from the person making the content. They actually want to understand what is it that's driving that want? What's the want beneath the want beneath the want? And you just keep unraveling the layers of the onion to truly get down to what is going on with people. What is in their world? What's driving these things? What is the core that's actually making them want to do the thing? And the more that you can understand that, the more that you can be curious about that and get stories and build up your own repertoire of knowledge, the more you start to differentiate from other people who are creating content from ChatGPT, because now you're building up your own internal world where it's driven by customer stories and your story, and it's all based on relational stuff. So empathy starts with curiosity, asking the why behind the want. If you can get down to that and really be curious about that over and over and over again, that's where you really start to have success. Now, I know an objection that I get to this a lot of the times is people are like, oh, well, who do I even talk to? And oftentimes what they end up defaulting to is they don't talk to anybody. And that's where you get stuck because people get into this mode where, like, oh, well, no one wants to tell me the answer to what they want. I'm not going to ask. And no one's offering it up. So I'm just in this bind. I'm stuck. But I think it's super underrated to ask people for their advice, for their help. I used to do this when I was young, coming out of college, even in college. I would message people on LinkedIn and ask for advice. And almost every single person was happy to provide advice. People love giving advice. The mistake that people make, especially business owners, is they rush to the conclusion of like, I got to sell, always be selling, right? Glenn Ross, always be closing. Every single conversation turns into a sales conversation. And they ruin it. They ruin the ability to actually get to the heart of what people want because they just jump straight to, oh, person who I think could be a customer is on the line. I'm going to sell. And I get this all the time. And it annoys me to no end. People will email me and ask me if I want to buy their stuff without even building any sort of a connection or a relationship first. And maybe that was working at some point in the past. Maybe when the internet was young and everybody went on there and just was like happy to buy whatever showed up. You know, that like banner ads used to have a 27% click through rate. What do they have now? 0.0001. Sure. Maybe in the past, if you always pitched people right up front, just like they clicked on banner ads, they bought stuff. Sure. Okay. Not anymore. There's way too many options. There's way too many things to choose from. And if I just want a basic answer to my question, I can go on ChatGPT. I don't need to hear it from you. I can get it from somewhere else. So why would I get it from you? So anyway, circling back to how to ask for advice in order to get to the bottom of this, what do people want? If you don't have anybody that's actively coming to you inbound, so you're just getting started, just ask for advice. Never pitch on those sales calls. I even called them sales calls. They're not sales calls. They're discovery calls. Never pitch on those discovery calls. And if people hear what you're saying and they're like, oh, well, I would like to buy whatever it is that you're selling. If you're solving this problem, then that's great. You can accept that. You're not going to be like, oh, no, I don't want to take your money or whatever. But you never pitch. You have to go into that with that mindset. I'm not pitching on this call. I am just asking for advice. Some of the most valuable advice that I've ever gotten for our business comes from those calls. And then the funny thing is that sometimes those folks will come and sign up for our product 8 years later. And you know it's because you had that conversation and it wasn't the right time for them. But their advice was really, really valuable. And the reason why it was valuable is because I wasn't going into it with a pitch. As soon as you pitch people, they shut down. They become wary. They're like, wow, this guy's just trying to sell me stuff, so I got to be on my guard. I don't want to give too much away. But if you go into it with genuine curiosity to understand what's going on in the world as it pertains to whatever it is that you have to offer, and that's the mindset that you keep throughout that conversation, don't break the frame, keep it going, that's how you really start to get down to this. So that's it. If you can get to that and get that advice, you can be curious, you can break through the layers, get down to what people really want, then start speaking to that, especially in the intros to your content, then you'll start to see engagement go up. You'll start to see people actually want to work with you, want to buy your product. And it's not because things fundamentally change. You're still offering the same level of service and the same, great stuff that you offer now. The difference is that you're connecting the dots to where people are today. You're connecting the dots to where they are and what they want versus just going into it like, oh, here's a solution. And that's the way to really grow using content in 2026. And I cannot tell you how strong the dichotomy is right now. If you can answer that question, everything's great. Growth is higher than ever. If you can't answer that question, it's just flat zeros because there's too many options. There's too much good entertainment on the internet, and there's somebody else that's going to be able to speak to what it is that people want. So you got to get down to the answer to that question if you want your content to work in 2026 and going forward.